Have you ever wondered why the West might have vested interest in keeping Africa economically disadvantaged? Well, buckle up as we unravel 3 compelling reasons that might just reshape your perspective. Make sure you stick around to the end, as I promise you the third reason is going to really surprise you. Let's get right into the video. The first point is resource exploitation. As we all know, the West benefits from the abundant natural resources in Africa at a lower cost. A financially weakened Africa allows for continuous extraction of raw materials at a very low cost without facing competition. Just listen to what this idiot had to say. He said this, and I quote, "Leaving Africa in Chinese hands is a big mistake," says the Italian diplomat. He went further to say that to look at Africa is crucial for the future. To leave Africa in the Chinese hands is a big mistake for everybody here. Increasing presence in Africa is important for a stronger Europe. It's like they haven't done enough already. Just imagine the pure audacity of this guy. Just like Africa is like a biscuit that you just toss around. Like, no, we don't have to let Africa go. We have to hold them tight because we need them. Hey, but I thought Africa is at the mercy of the West, and without the West, Africa cannot survive, right? Now, this is where it gets crazy. France imports 17,640 tons of uranium per year at a price of 1,411,200, when it should have paid 352,800 euros per year. Now take a look. France buys uranium from Niger at a price of 80 cents per kilo, but they buy the same amount of uranium from Canada at the price of 200 euros per kilo. How is that not crazy? Which means France is paying 99.96% lower than the market price. Tell me, how is that not exploitation? You don't even need to take my word for this. Listen to what the current Prime Minister of Italy had to say about this.
Perché le cose vanno raccontate come si deve. Vomitevole è chi buono, che lo vuoi tu? Ci hai mai tolto il pathos? Vomitevole è chi, come la Francia, continua a sfruttare l'Africa stampando moneta per 14 nazioni africane sulle quali applica il signoraggio, facendo lavorare bambini nelle miniere, estraendo materie prime come accade in Niger, dove la Francia estrae il 30% dell'uranio che gli serve a far camminare le centrali nucleari e il 90% dei nigerini vive senza elettricità. Non ci venire a fare lezioni, Macron, perché l'Africa scappa da voi e la soluzione non è spostare gli africani in Europa, è liberare l'Africa da certi europei. Non accettiamo lezioni. Chiaro?
The second point is global dominance. By perpetuating economic challenges in Africa and convincing the whole world and even Africans themselves through the help of the pathetic, misguided Western mainstream media, and also by killing African leaders that challenge the status quo. Take a look.
Kwame Nkrumah was an idol, a heroical figure in Africa's post-colonial history. As the first prime minister and then president of Ghana, he successfully led his country to independence from British colonial rule in 1957, making Ghana the first African country south of the Sahara to achieve this feat. The clue was, and what the West annoyed probably the most, was the Pan-African vision he had. He repeatedly calls for the unification of Africa under one government. He warns that without the mutual support of African countries, colonialism would return in disguised form. If you look today at who owns the mines, the mining corporations, plantations, resources and minerals, you have to say that this is exactly what had happened. Nkrumah became a target for the USA during the Cold War era. They were fearing the spread of communism and seeking to protect its strategic and economic interests. So they supported a coup that overthrew Nkrumah's government in 1966. 3 years of repressive military rule followed for Ghana, and Nkrumah could only watch from afar. Despite everything, he remained committed to his dream of a united Africa until his early death in 1972. Number 9 was assassinated by French forces, Rouben Omniobe. As Nkrumah, Rouben Omniobe was a critical figure in the African independence movement. As the leader of the Independence Party in Cameroon, he advocated for immediate and unconditional independence from French colonial rule. He was brave and hopeful. His integrity and uncompromising stance against colonial rule posed a considerable threat to French interests from Cameroon, as they were committed to maintain its colonial possession and economic influence in Cameroon. France decided to get rid of Niobe.
faisait régner la terreur. Et à partir de ce moment-là, j'ai décidé de lui faire la guerre.
In 1958, Ruben Umniube was assassinated in a military operation by French forces, shot from behind. A brutal response demonstrating the length to which colonial powers would go to suppress independence movements. His death marked a tragic turn in Cameroon's fight for independence. He was followed by Félix Roland Moumié, who was as brave and incorruptible as Niobe. So France did it again. The French Secret Service killed him by putting thallium, a paralyzing poison, in his drink. It was to take more than 30 years before it was allowed to speak about that fight for freedom in Cameroon, which France put down so brutally, radiated from Congo across Africa. Born into a world of colonial oppression and the traumas of colonial atrocities by the Belgians, his desire for justice developed. As the first Prime Minister of Congo, he vehemently denounced Belgium's colonial rule by directly attacking the Belgian king. He pushed for wealth distribution, black nationalism, and confidence, a change in mind of the people that were oppressed for centuries. His vision of a unified, free Congo with no artificial tribal borders provoked fear in the former colonial power and the Western world. His audacity to challenge the status quo and to demand justice became a threat to the West's privileged access to Congo's rich resources. In his famous Independence Day speech, Lumumba denounced the sufferings of the Congolese under colonial rule. This speech was to become his legacy, but also his death sentence.
Nous avons connu les ironies, les insultes, les coups que nous devions subir matin, midi et soir, parce que nous étions des nègres. Nous avons connu que notre père fut spolié au nom des textes prétendument légaux qui ne faisaient que reconnaître les droits du plus fort. Nous avons connu que la loi n'était jamais la même, selon qu'il s'agissait d'un blanc ou d'un noir, accommodante pour les uns, cruelle inhumaine pour les autres.
A mere 7 months after Lumumba took office, the then 35-year-old got betrayed, captured, publicly assaulted, and finally killed in a hail of bullets. His death in January 1961 plunged Congo in a vortex of violence and war. Till this day, the country is a battleground for international powers and companies exploiting the Congo's mineral resources. Lumumba dared to challenge the colonial powers. He is the embodiment of the fight for justice and independence in Africa, and his legacy lives on, reminding us that the fight for independence is not over.
By doing so, the West maintains competitive edge and ensures that African nations remain dependent consumers rather than emerging economic powerhouses themselves. Now, the third point, this is going to surprise you guys. The third point is economic hitman. I'm not even going to lie. When I stumbled on this information, I was also blown away myself. Have you guys read a book called The Confession of the Economic Hitman, written by a guy called John Perkins? If you guys have not read it, I want to suggest you guys read this book. Apparently, there was a secret bank that was created by the CIA, the IMF, and the American government in the 1950s. Now, the aim of this bank was to lend out money to countries that were raw material producing in order to indebt them and to have a form of control over those countries. Now, this is where the job of the economic hitman comes into play. Any country or any leader that refuses this loan is going to be killed. I know some of you are like, how? Yeah, that is actually true. And you don't need to take my word for it. Listen to this.
Africa, historically, sub-Saharan Africa has been fundamental to the global prosperity of the advanced countries. Okay? And Africa had a role to play. It has a role as a raw material producer. We will not allow sub-Saharan Africa to escape that. Okay, we do everything to keep sub-Saharan Africa where it is, also impoverished. It's absolutely vital for the prosperity of everyone else. Okay, we give them aid. Aid for what? Actually, we give them aid to keep repressive regimes in power. That's all. Okay, we're not giving them aid for much more except a little bit of infrastructure to make sure those raw materials get to the ports and aren't gotten out of the ground. But for the most part, we give repressive regimes money and power and guns to keep that system going. This is what it's fundamentally about. All the hypocrisy about transparency and democracy and bullshit like that, it's all bullshit. You know? And at least the Chinese don't enter into that bullshit. They say, we don't care about the whole political environment, we just give the money. Okay? And it's for raw material extraction. period. Telling some of my students today, was it today or yesterday, about Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Do you remember this? Have any of you heard of this one? Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It's a book written by John Perkins, who used to work for a very nebulous, opaque bank. No one had ever heard of this bank, but it was formed in the 1950s by the IMF, the CIA, and the American State Department. And it had only one job: to lend money to developing countries that were raw material producers in order to indebt them. Once you are in my debt, I control you. Okay? And this bank had 4,000 employees. But no one ever heard of this bank, you see. But it would go to country after country offering loans. And if the president did not accept the loan, they were killed. And he gives two examples of presidents who were killed when they did not accept the loan.
Now, as you conclude this video, it's very important for us to understand the complexities of these dynamics. Because of course we have some very clueless, stupid, misguided African leaders back home that have no clue of what they are doing. And yes, you can also argue that they are part of the problem. Rightfully so, they are part of the problem too. However, understanding the intricate interplay between the global powerhouse and the African economic landscape is the first step towards fostering an equitable future. This is the video for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you have more reasons that you want to talk about in the comments? Let's discuss about it. Follow me on all my socials, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out.